Hi, welcome back, or maybe welcome for the first time to Wanderlusting Lawyer. This is a channel where mostly I talk about the Camino de Santiago pilgrimage through Spain, Portugal, France, Europe. It's been a little bit since I made a video. It just tends to happen sometimes, and I'm trying to feel re-inspired and reconnected to the Camino. It's tough when, unlike a lot of my peers that are out there making content, I don't get to go very often to actually do the Camino, given my job and everything. But I still have so much content to share. And so it's really about just getting in front of the camera and recording the videos and feeling reconnected again to the Camino, but also all of you. So I think, I have a decent number of new subscribers to the channel, and I don't really know. It'd be interesting to do a poll to see how many of you guys are in your planning stages for a first Camino or are Camino veterans or somewhere in between. But today I'm going to go back to my Camino 101 series and just talk about what it's like to actually stay at an albergue. If you see it in English, it looks like Albergue, Albergue. I'm just going to talk about what those are, what it's like to stay there, and I won't really cover the other sleeping arrangements on the Camino in detail, but I'll mention them just in the context of some of the things I'm talking about. So I guess a great place to start is, what are albergues? They are low cost, very, very, very low cost in general, shared accommodations. And usually if you see the word albergue, they are exclusively for pilgrims. On the Camino Francés, the French way, there are a lot of these exclusively for pilgrims. From what I understand, on other routes like the Norte, which goes by a lot of beach towns where there are surf schools, it may be pretty rare to find albergues or hostels essentially that are only for people doing the Camino. So it's always good to do, if you want to, if you care, do a little bit of research, even if it's just, that day, into potential places if you really want to have an exclusive pilgrim experience. You might see them called albergues públicos, which are also called municipales, or albergues privados, private ones. Usually the municipal albergues are actually run by the government and have a set nightly fee. So in Galicia, this is where I stayed on the Camino Inglés a couple of times, which I made a video about fairly recently. And when I was walking, it was €8 a night. Now I think they've increased it to 10. But often these will be just one big-ish or big room full of bunk beds. There won't be kind of separate smaller rooms, except maybe a smaller room for, for example, for people who have special needs that might not have bunk beds. So yeah, be prepared to be in a room with a bunch of other people, which is, often half of the fun. And then the private albergues were, again, maybe only for pilgrims, but they are a little bit more expensive. They could be, I understand the prices have gone up substantially on the Camino, but they could be anywhere from 12 to 20 euros a night for the bed, and then, charge extra for breakfast or dinner. And also, depending on, some may have private room options that would be a little bit more expensive. And typically, again, they do have bunk beds. Maybe you can find one or two, especially in France. Well, that's a whole different system, so I'm not going to cover that. But in general, be prepared for bunk beds. And I'll have a video coming up where I kind of cover the subject of bunk bed etiquette. But yeah, just be prepared for that. There's really no way around it if you want to be staying at albergues. Sorry, my notes are here in case you see me looking this way. A lawyer, I got to have my notes. So then a couple of other, so albergues are the probably main option that most pilgrims use, and definitely the most affordable. But you might just find regular hostels, which again will have pilgrims, but will also have anybody just wanting to stay in a lower cost, typically shared accommodation. You have hotels, and although you can find really expensive hotels in Spain, I found private rooms in hotels and places for like 20, 30 euros a night, my own bathroom, or like a shared bathroom for the floor, but there was almost nobody else there. That was the case in Samos. I remember the Samos detour that I did. You can stay in hotels. Hotels are a great. I just said hotels. I'm already talking about hotels. What I wanted to say was hotels are a great option because, sometimes people really want to stay in the albergues and have that social connection. But in my experience, it's pretty hard to get very good sleep in them. So every once in a while, you can splurge and stay in a hotel and just get a better night's sleep, quieter night's sleep, nobody rustling around. What I was going to say is there are also other places called casa rurales, which are kind of, I would say, more like a B&B. They're smaller accommodations, very cute, often offer breakfast in the price. And there's an established network of them throughout Spain. So that's kind of what the different sleeping options are. So let me talk a little bit more about actually staying at an albergue. Check-in and check-out tends to not be particularly flexible. So a lot of places will require pilgrims to check out by no later than, if you're lucky, 9 a.m. It's usually more like 8:30, perhaps even earlier, but typically not earlier than 8 that I've seen. And there are some places, like especially the private ones, like if your stuff is out of the room and you're just finishing up your breakfast, it tends to be a very relaxed environment. But the bigger municipal ones have to be strict about it because they need to clean and get everything ready for the next group of 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 pilgrims coming through. I can think of, especially in Roncesvalles at the beginning, they're getting ready for tons of people coming in. So they will be sure to usher you out if you're running late, and then usually check in. It could start maybe as early as noon, but it's usually more like 1 or 2 p.m. And so if you arrive before they're open, a lot of times you'll see like a line of backpacks out while people go and have a coffee or lunch and then come back to know the check-in order. So they're stricter. Well, it's interesting. I guess there are stricter, but also more flexible rules in some way. I feel like there's earlier check-in than at most hotels, but also earlier checkout. So that's just something to keep in mind. But on the Inglés and on the Aragonés, I was rarely finished for the day before like 3 or 4, so it didn't matter anyway. But on the Francés, there are a couple times on shorter or easier days that I was done by noon, but I would just go get coffee or beer or whatever and then wait for check-in. So yeah, I mentioned before the bunk beds, so be ready for that. And in some places there's some really nice spacing, and in others they're often pushed together in sets of 2. So you'll be essentially like sharing a king size bed with the person next to you. I've talked about the bathroom situation in many of my other videos, but I'll just recap it again briefly here. It really depends on the situation. Some places have single sex bathrooms and others have co-ed bathrooms, but I've never been in an albergue that had a co-ed bathroom that didn't have single stalls for the showers. And most places do have single stalls for the showers, even if they're single sex. If you're walking the Camino Inglés and staying at albergues, go watch the video I made about that topic specifically because it's a little bit funky. But yeah, it is interesting. You may be in a co-ed bathroom. So like the toilets and the showers will have their stalls, but everyone's in the same bathroom. The sinks are together. So, I mean, it just is what it is, right? Sometimes in the private albergues, if there are smaller rooms, there might be a bathroom associated with that room. So it might be a private bathroom for like 6 or 8 people, which is, I think, pretty nice. And then there's usually like a hallway bathroom somewhere. So there are more options. The albergues are likely to have a kitchen, but post-COVID, a lot of them at least in 2023, which is the last time I was on a Camino, they didn't really have cookware to use. So there might be a microwave or a place to sit and eat food, or maybe a refrigerator, but there weren't pots and pans and things like that to actually cook food. If you've walked more recently and have come across places that have abundant cookware, please leave a comment below. But that was my experience, that as of late, it wasn't quite as easy to cook as it used to be. And some also offer actual like paid dinners, which I mentioned before. They'll have either a restaurant where you can order something, or they'll have a set dinner menu, usually have like a vegetarian option as well. They may have lockers. I don't carry a lock. I don't use a locker. I made a video about securing your valuables while you're walking. I just have a separate pouch that I take with me that has like my true valuables. And then I go by the hope and the goodness that people aren't going to steal your stuff. And, it does happen, but I haven't locked up my stuff, but some places do have lockers. So if that's important to you, you'll want to bring a little lock. They also may require you to store your shoes and your hiking poles outside of the room to prevent dirt and things like that. Keeping the rooms as clean as possible with everyone coming in from a day of hiking is tough, but that is one thing they do to help. So it's good especially if you have a common shoe brand, either put like unique laces on them, or have something like put them in a little like sack or something, so that no one, if they're up at 5:30 or 6 a.m. and grab shoes to go, no one accidentally grabs your shoes or like your walking stick. So that's a good tip, is to have something that, if somebody picks it up, something will click and say, oh yeah, these are not mine. Laundry. And again, I have usually specific videos on all these topics. This is just a way for me to give an overview, a good soundbite to those of you who are newer to this planning process. So for laundry, they're all going to have some way to do your laundry, by hand at least. And then they may also have paid washers and dryers, or even free washers and dryers. It just depends on the location. But, they're always going to have either the last case scenario, like bathroom sinks may be the only place to do it. That's rare. Usually there are specific laundry sinks, and you shouldn't be washing your stuff in the bathroom sinks, but that might be the only option. I can think of a handful of places that was the case. But usually there's some laundry sinks, where you can soak and scrub your clothes. Although my tricks, I soak my clothes while I'm in the shower in like a dry bag, so that they're getting already like a lot of the dirt out, and then I take them to the laundry sink, and I can just speed up the process that way, and be considerate towards other people who are waiting. But then they're going to have drying racks, either like big cords of drying racks, or they're going to have kind of like the fold ones, and so again, like, just always good to be considerate when you're hanging your stuff. Don't keep your stuff spaced closely. Don't take up tons of space and not leave room for other people. If it's sunny out, check your stuff often. When it's dry, get it down so that people arriving later can get their stuff up. But you will definitely have some way to do your laundry. Some have really cool features. This is why, people say, I get that a lot of people like to go with the flow and not plan ahead, but I really like to at least know, there are a couple places I miss along the Camino Francés, which is actually fun in a way because it makes me really want to get back, but also places that I would have loved to stop that I knew nothing about. But there are places with pools or hammocks or, cool different restaurants or whatever. And so that's kind of fun to think about if it's of interest to you, especially if you're walking in the summer. All right, I think that covers more or less the features. I'm just going to make a couple of etiquette points. And again, one of my upcoming videos will kind of be talking more about some of the etiquette issues for the Camino and for Albergues. But you definitely want to it's a big no-no to put your pack on your bed, because that's, if you happen to have bed bugs on your pack, that's one way that they can just get, if there are I guess it goes both ways. If you have bed bugs that have attached to your pack, they can easily get into the bed, and vice versa. If there are already bed bugs in that bed, which hopefully there aren't, they can get on your pack and be transferred elsewhere. So you always want to keep your pack on the ground. which, it makes it more challenging to pack up, but it is what it is. And if there's a chair, a lot of times the bunk beds will have a chair next to them. If you're on the bottom bunk, that chair is for the person on the top bunk, because you can sit on your bed and kind of organize all your stuff on the floor, but they can't do that. They would have to come and like sit on the floor and do that. So leave that chair for them. Don't dry your stuff on it. Don't put your stuff on it, unless of course you talk to them first and they're fine with it. But that chair is for the person in the top bunk. And I'll be talking about this more, but some people say there's bunk etiquette and who sleeps up and who sleeps below. I'll be sharing thoughts again about that in another video, but in general, in my experience, bunks are not assigned. So it's just earlier you get there, then you can pick your bunk. Often at the public albergues, you have to, or they really, really strongly prefer you to pay in cash in euros, and they also want exact change. So like when I was in Galicia and it was 8 euros a night, they always appreciated when I had 8 euros exactly instead of 10 or 20, because they're always, they only had so many 1 or 2 euro money pieces, their coins in euros. Try to be quiet between the hours of I'm going to say like 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Some people will say 9 p.m. or I think 10 p.m. is totally reasonable. I think if you want to go to bed before 10 p.m., that's your prerogative. But I think that's, especially in the summer in Spain, it's not even dark until close to 11. And so I think to impose any earlier than a 10 p.m. bedtime on people, to me, that's not fair. Again, this will be the main subject in my upcoming video, sort of about this sauce of being considerate versus entitled. But I'd say between 10 and 6 is a really respectable and appropriate window. Now, if there's a heat wave going on, a lot of people will want to be up by 5 sometimes to start walking, because the sun does come up later as well in the morning in Spain. So you can get a lot of hours in before the deep heat. But I'd say between 10 and 6, those should be your more or less quiet hours. Some places will require you to be in the albergue by 10 or you're locked out. But in general, we're adults, no one's policing you. It's just all about being respectful toward fellow pilgrims. If you're able to, if there's a nice big common room and you, especially if you're one of the first people up and moving, gather your things and take it out to pack, so you're not rustling and making noise while people are trying to sleep. Usually there's a big common room. And so if you have kind of all your stuff more or less in one space, or you could bring, if you could find one of those collapsible big sacks that weigh an ounce, 2 ounces, and just put everything in there and get it out. Honestly, that's probably the way to do it, so that you're not disturbing others as they're trying to sleep. Don't snooze your alarm more than once if you're going to do it. I wear a watch and I put the alarm on there. So that's my backup. But don't snooze your alarm 5 or 6 times. That really stinks for other people. If there is a kitchen that has dishes and things, cookware, make sure you do your dishes and you clean up. A lot of these places have volunteers that do the turnover every day, and they already have so much going on. Having to wash your dishes is just going to set them behind and is ridiculous. So yeah, do your dishes. I'm looking at my list, and I think that about covers everything I wanted to go over here. I hope that's a pretty good overview. Now, again, go check out all my videos. I have videos specifically to how does the dinner work when you're staying in albergue, laundry, bathroom. So I cover all the topics separately, but I hope this provides a good overview of just what is an albergue? What are the different places I can stay? What will that be like? If I forgot anything big, you guys, leave a comment below, leave your questions below, leave your disagreements below, but hopefully also your agreements or thumbs up on this video. And yeah, please please comment. The engagement always is really wonderful for me. And I do hope to be back more regularly. I am eyeing some Caminos potentially for 2026. I really hope I can make that happen. And it's great to be back with all you guys, and I will talk to you again very soon. As always, say it with me, buen camino.